Today's homicide, more than perhaps any other, demonstrates the absolute callousness of the criminal element in Barbados. To carry out any execution is wrong, but to do so in the precincts of a primary school, a place that is to be a place of safety for our young and fragile minds, is an act of sheer evil. Little children would have been walking to school when the shooting took place. Some might even have been in plain view, and they must now bear the scars for the rest of their lives. Coincidentally, a meeting of the National Security Council has long been scheduled for this evening after Cabinet, and this morning's events and other events from the start of the year will certainly attract our attention. So let me serve notice on these bandits and all other people of like mind. We will not allow you to destroy our society. The handful of you will not be allowed to wreak havoc unchecked in Barbados. We are intent on bringing Barbados back to a state of relative peace and safety, and we will do whatever we must. No lawful action will be considered to be out of reach of the Royal Barbados Police Force, and I am charging them with bringing these lawless people to swift justice. Barbados must become a very uncomfortable place for these villains. The Royal Barbados Police Force, in our current estimates exercise, has sought additional resources, and I want to assure the people of Barbados that these requests are being looked on favorably. This morning's events prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that we all stand to be affected by the actions of these criminals, and we must all band together to stamp their influence out. I again urge Barbadians to desist from this notion that if they have information that they should not come forward. Even if it is your brother or your sister, anybody engaged in this kind of evil activity has to be brought to justice, and it can only happen with right-thinking Barbadians coming forward to support the efforts of the Royal Barbados Police Force. We are in this together, and when one side falls, the entire country will fall. Questions?
You talked about no lawful action being outside of the reach of the police force, but, and I can imagine they won't tell us everything that they're going to do, but what type of things would you imagine the police force would do to bring these people to justice?
Well, first of all, let me just say that there is a feeling that the Royal Barbados Police Force is not as aggressive as it could be in dealing with this kind of situation. I don't think that's the case. But, you know, we have a society that every time a policeman starts some kind of exercise, there's somebody out with a cell phone camera. And we believe it is calculated to intimidate them and to prevent them from doing their job to the best of that ability. That is at an end. We have a job to do, and we will do it. Now, I can't disclose details of any policing operations. At one point in time, it had been quite common. It was quite common for them to be doing searches and so on. Those they haven't really stopped, but I believe that we can see over the coming weeks that those will be intensified. We have to run these people to ground, and I don't think that we're at the point where we have to panic. But certainly we'll be expecting the members of the force to do all that is necessary, and they have tools in their arsenal that they're able to use, and as I said, nothing that is lawful as far as I'm concerned is beyond them.
And I know that you updated the legislation extending the amount of time before people can appeal for bail if they're charged with murder. Has that already started? Are people already?
Oh yeah,
2 years?
yes. There have been people who have felt the impact of that particular legislation. Unfortunately, there are people who had been granted bail before that legislation came into place, but certainly you will not see that happening now. Our task will be to use the 5 criminal court judges to make sure that trials happen within the 2 years. That, and there are a few other legislative initiatives that will be coming within the next, I'd like to say before the end of this financial year, procedural things that will be changing in relation to the course of trials, which will allow for speedier criminal trials. But the criminals in Barbados have been benefiting from a system that has been moving at a snail's pace. And that is why they've been getting bail. So it is incumbent on us to do all that is possible, all that we can to make sure that, of course, a trial starts and is completed quickly. If they get off, they get off. That is how justice works. But they are not to be granted bail simply by a fluxion of time. That is wrong. And on our side, we need to make sure that that stops.
Because you had the gun amnesty, you had this extension for bail. At the end of the year, we ended up with 49 murders. We've got 2 already this year.
Yes. Well, let me say this. We have, and I think it must be evident to Barbadians, we have a large number of firearms on our streets. I'm not going to hazard a guess, but it is a reality. On a regular basis, you will hear about shootings taking place in our districts. Only on Tuesday, there was a shooting in Orleans. I don't want to say that there's practically one every week, but you're a journalist and you know that these things are happening with alarming frequency. So we have a problem with firearms. Now, the police have been successful in seizing them, but the truth is I don't think that we are really getting too much past the tip of the iceberg. So while we have put the gun amnesty in place and that yielded just over 40 firearms, we honestly would be fooling ourselves if we expect that a criminal that buys a Glock for $4,000 in the black market or that buys a submachine gun for $15,000 in the black market is going to come and surrender in a gun amnesty. We would be foolish to think that. But there are some people who wanted the opportunity and we gave it to them. Now, the rest is up to us. And I'm confident that the Royal Barbados Police Force has the skills. I think that we still have adequate manpower to be able to do the job. And I expect that we'll get the job done. I'm not going to try to predict what will happen in the coming year. We are now at 2 for the year. Will that trend continue? I hope not. I will say that the force has been doing extraordinarily well in terms of solving the crimes. So many of those that took place last year, not that this is to satisfy anyone, what we want to do is to eliminate them. But the force has certainly been doing an excellent job in relation to the investigations and charging individuals. And that kind of job is what we expect to see persisting in relation to finding weapons and getting them off of the streets. But I will say that the port now has completed all of the work on their new scanner, and this will see 100% of the containers coming through the port being scanned. Remember that this was not happening in years past. Less than 6% of the containers that came in through our ports were scanned, and therefore it was open season. Guns were coming in like water through a sieve. So when we bring that to an end, then we have an opportunity to investigate and locate the firearms that are on the streets. Police are doing operations on an almost daily basis to bring in those firearms, whether it's 1 by 1, 2 by 2, 4 by 4. That is reaping some success. But the numbers of guns that we think are on the streets in Barbados that built up over the last few years, over the last 10 years, it will take some time to get them out of the system.
I just have one last question, and it was about the increase in the number of judges that was supposed to impact on the movement of cases through the system.
Yes.
Can you give us an update on how that has been working?
Well, like most initiatives, it takes a while for these things to build up. So, for example, we now have 5 dedicated criminal court judges. 2 of those judges had to go through a process of training. I'm speaking of Justice Pavel and Justice Christopher Birch. So the one thing that it would be unwise to do is to immediately put a new judge to try a murder case, to try any case really. So those 2 judges have had to go through a system of training. That is, I believe, complete by now. We also have Carlisle Graves, Mr. Justice Carlisle Graves, who is a judge of regional reputation, and no disrespect intended to our other two criminal court judges. We have asked Mr. Justice Graves to take charge of getting rid of the backlog of cases. So it will take some time before we see the full effect of that initiative, but I believe it's fair to say that we can already see it happening, because in addition to the criminal trials that are being done by Madam Justice Beckles and Mr. Justice Worrell, we at least have Mr. Justice Graves added to that pot, and with the training of Justice Bevell and Justice Birch completed, we will be able to make a serious indent. But let's not fool ourselves. The Bahamas has 13 criminal court judges. Trinidad has positions for 60 plus high court judges. We can throw as many judges at the problem as we want, but there are other things that have to come along with it, and therefore we are putting in place funding for additional prosecutors, because well, we had enough prosecutors to adequately manage 2 courts. We now have to put in place enough prosecutors to adequately manage 5. Now, we had 8 prosecutors doing 2 courts. Now we have 5 criminal courts. So we're going to need to increase that complement as well. We've started. I think that by the end of January, we should be bringing on an additional 3 prosecutors. But even in the case of prosecutors, they, like judges, also need to be trained. You don't just come off. I mean, if I take myself, for example, I'm one of Her Majesty's Counsel, but I couldn't try a criminal case tomorrow. I couldn't prosecute a criminal case tomorrow. I'd have to go through a fairly steep learning curve to be able to do it. So we have recruited additional prosecutors, but they will have to start on smaller matters and build up the skill set. We're going to be changing the procedural rules for criminal trials, and that's going to be happening within the next 2 or so months, to be able to see criminal trials going through faster as well. So it is not, I'm just making a point, it is not just a question of appointing additional judges. The system will not succeed if we don't also strengthen the prosecution side, and if we don't also strengthen the procedural side. So all of these things are part of a package that are being put in place, and at no small cost to Barbados at a time when we are in a program. But we are intent on doing what must be done to save Barbados.
I have 2 questions for you. One, alongside the police, will the members of the defense force be working with them as well to crack down?
That has never stopped. Every 6 months, we extend the remit of the Barbados Defense Force to support the work of the police. That has been the case now for many years, and it continues. The police benefit significantly from the support of the Defense Force, and having them is an important asset that we use, and that has been continuing, and it will continue for the foreseeable future.
Okay, and going back to the issue of the scanners, I know you said those are at the port, but will courier companies as well be scrutinized with the packages coming in?
We have to strengthen our scanning capacity at all ports of arrival, whether it's cargo or passengers. So there is work that is in train in relation to the airport as well, and the post office. Believe people are trying to get guns into Barbados in every single way possible. They've tried at the post office, they've tried with varying degrees of success through the courier companies and also through the airport. So we're very vigilant, and additional technological and other requirements, additional technological resources and other resources are being put in place.
Have the scanners at the port netted any rifles, guns, anything?
I couldn't say, but I know that we are scanning 100% of the scanners and 100% of the containers, and that should help us all sleep a little safer at night. We good?
Thank you all.
All right, great. Thank you, folks.